Welcome to the Future of Less Work, where we're piecing together the transformation of work, one conversation at a time. I'm Nirit Cohen, and today's conversation takes us one step further into a future where our tools help us work effectively no matter where we are. For decades, our interaction with technology depended on tools that separate us from natural communication, keyboard, mouse, touch screens. But what happens when we no longer need those interfaces? What if we could simply talk with technology, through technology, and have it talk right back at us seamlessly, just as we do with each other? Imagine a future where we don't need to speak differently to people and technology, where prompts, commands, complicated inputs are replaced by natural conversation, where our human agent teams are just teams, where it doesn't matter if we're speaking to technology or a person, because the interaction feels the same. That's why I'm so excited to have with us Josh Blalock, Chief Evangelist at Jabra. Josh is right at the center of this shift, exploring how voice AR and smart hardware are reshaping not just how we communicate, how we work, how we collaborate, connect, and create in a world where technology becomes part of the conversation. Josh, welcome to the Future of Less Work.
Thank you so much for having me on. I'm excited to be here. It's a fun topic.
It is absolutely a fun topic. And I was reminded a few years back, I go to CES, kind of like Disneyland for geeks, right? So I go to CES to look at the trends. And I remember coming back a couple of years back and thinking, we're doing everything we possibly can to mesh the physical and the digital world into a seamless, part of conversation. So I actually think, why don't we start big? Give me your vision, a few years into the future. What will it look like?
I mean, so, talking about this topic, you look at Star Trek as an example of, we're gravitating toward this world where everyone walks around the ship and they're just talking to the computer, right? They're just talking to the onboard AI that gives them everything they need and scans things and looks into this giant database of stuff and gives them back. But the whole premise of that was they're talking to it in natural language. And I think that, we're far off from being in starships going around the galaxy. That part of how we interact with the technology is much closer than it is practically here at this stage, right? We're looking at how we interact with AI, with the tools we use every day, changing rapidly. And I think just a few months ago, everyone was really focused on the prompts and how you're prompting the AI. And to a degree, that's still important to some levels on how you're prompting, how you're crafting it, getting more specific with your questions and less generic. But when you think about it, that same level of specific versus generic kind of applies to human language, right?
Yeah, I'm thinking maybe the need to speak to AI will help us become better managers and peers, because we'll be more specific about what success looks like, what we're looking, the assumptions we're making. But those are not prompts, right? They're going to teach us to speak differently.
Yeah, they are. I mean, and you have to, the subtleties of the words you say really elicit different types of reactions, different types of responses. And it's kind of the same with AI. So we're at this almost future stage, and I think it's going to be evolving constantly. But I think the big key thing that becomes very evident here, I think one of the big blockers to people as they looked at AI and prompting, and this feels big and scary and new, and I don't know how to catch up, and now I got to learn how to be a prompt engineer. And I think that was really a big level of blockage to people actually wholeheartedly accepting AI. As you get to the point where people can just speak to it, just say, hey, this is what I need. This is what my problem actually is. I'm frustrated. And you can give the little human nuances to the conversation. Go off on some little rant if you want. And the AI knows what's going on. It knows you're going on a rant, but it also knows the meat of what you're asking for. And it can just give you back a meaningful answer that you can then interact with. I think that removes that huge blockage that was kind of this stumbling block for a lot of people that are like, I don't have time to learn to be a prompt engineer.
And that's a really good point, because we talk about AI literacy and skills. And I wonder, the more the tools are able to converse with us in our language and understand the nuances, and, like you say, I'm going off on a rant and it figures out that, lots of words mean the same thing.
Yeah.
What does AI literacy and skills mean then? Or are we just right back to, make sense when you talk?
I mean, I think that newer generations in the workforce are going to start. It's going to become a pattern of the way they work. I think for those of us that have been in the workforce for a while, we're the ones with the higher level of learning to do, or the bigger habits to change, to adapt to the new way of upskilling and continue skilling into the future. And the newer generations, this is just going to become how they are used to using technology. To a certain level, they're already used to rapid changes and innovation with technology. They have the current generation, the youngest generation in the workforce, grew up with smartphones in their hands. They grew up knowing how to interact with these tools. For those of us that have been in the space for many more years than that, a lot of this has kind of been picked up and learned as we go. My background as an engineer and architect in IT was, hey, you learn this server architecture, and you've probably got a good 3 to 5 years before you really have to learn again, right? Now you're just going to be maintaining and building this one version of the server. I was an Exchange Server 2003 engineer for a while, right? Well, that's going to last me till the next version comes out, and it's a pretty these
Yeah,
days
and
that's
I
different.
think so. I'm going to just pause you here on this because you're going a little too fast because I'm actually I think I'm one step behind you. So you're talking about the speed of change and our ability to adapt,
Yeah,
but somehow losing code and losing prompts and losing the complicated technology words around interacting with the digital space, right? And shifting to voice as your keyboard, right?
yeah.
To basically converse. Shouldn't that make it even easier? Suddenly, grandma can talk to the computer and it'll do what she wants versus, today she can't because she needs to learn to code.
Yeah, it absolutely does. And I think when it comes to some of the more basic interactions and use cases with AI, it's going to be that simple all the way through, right? Hey, I can just talk, and the whole burden of needing to learn or even know the essence of what AI is kind of gone. You just hit the little mic button or say the trigger word to get it to interact with you, like an Alexa or like whatever, and you're off to the races. We've seen a lot of that already in the home, right? With Alexas and with other home assistants, AI assistants out there. So we're setting the table already for how easy it can be to just talk to someone and ask it for something. To this point, much of that has still involved knowing the right words to say, the right trigger word, asking for things
Yeah.
that are within the parameters of what the thing or the tool can do. But as you get to a place, and as we get to a place of being able to speak more openly and freely with it, I think the barriers of learning come down, and the ease of using the tools is going to increase. As the AI gets better too, I think it's even going to suggest to us when it's starting to see what it thinks we want in our question, to say, I think maybe you're going in this direction. Is this what you're looking for? You already see some of those suggestions with GPT, et cetera. When you're in there, it's already anticipating where you're going with the train of thought, and it's like, maybe you want to go here next.
Yeah,
So
it's like the, I'm thinking ways it, if I power it up at the end of the day, it asks me if I want to go home because that's kind of a logical assumption. From the space that you're deeply involved in, what actually needs to happen for voice to become the new keyboard so that conversation is the interface?
yeah, so I mean, with voice being the new keyboard, and you think in that case, okay, I'm instead of sitting here typing prompts and speaking prompts, et cetera, then obviously the input is no longer fingertips on a keyboard, keystrokes going into the system via electrical signals. Those electrical signals are now your voice being translated into the system, into data that needs to be used by the backend system, whether we're talking Microsoft Copilot or ChatGPT or whatever it is. And so capturing that voice becomes key, right? You need to be able to have an input that captures your voice, but not just captures it in any old way. It needs to capture it as accurately and clearly as possible. I think
Yeah, I
we've
was going to
all
say
been
it'd be really fun if I could actually have a conversation with you while I'm, maybe making food in the kitchen and you won't hear the making food in the kitchen portion.
right. You need to drown out because life is busy and we're on the go constantly. We're not always sitting ideally in our home office with sound panels on the wall, keeping it, it's there are noises, life is busy, life gets messy at times. And so being able to interact with whatever the tool is clearly, concisely is going to be hugely important. That you need clean data to get clean outputs on the system. And when we think about, we've all seen transcripts, right? We've all seen different transcripts, earlier transcripts they're getting better and better and better. But some of the earlier transcripts, especially, you can see, wow, this is probably not even close to 90% accurate. Maybe not even 75, maybe less than that. When you have really low levels of accuracy, not even really low levels, when you have not great levels of
Not
accuracy,
good enough, right? It's not good
right?
enough to actually conduct life and business.
It's not. Those lower levels, you need to translate that data into actions, into summaries, into real follow-up items. If anything is off, if it is not 99.5% accurate or something, then chances are you're going to, at a crucial moment, have an incorrect action, or something is falsely attributed to the wrong person, or the nuances are going to be missed, especially when it comes to languages and uh, you know the accents we speak with, etc. The littlest thing will change the output on the other end. So you need to make sure that data is super clear coming in, and that's where a company like Jabra comes into play, where we speak very clearly to premium, high quality audio with really enhanced algorithms to capture all that peripheral noise, focus in on a voice, train in on that voice, and remove anything that isn't that voice. You need
Okay,
devices and
so,
tools
so
that can
you're
do that.
taking us back to the vision, and I really like that, right? If I go, we talked about this idea that we talk to the world and it talks back, whether it's technology or people, we kind of
Yeah,
use the same tools. We bring into that, right? A lot of the issues we've had in the last few years with hybrid work and remote and the feel of it being different, right? If you're sitting
yeah,
in a room and you brought in accents, right? So the whole global aspect and people
yeah,
talking different languages. And even, I mean, I know part of my vision way back then when we talked about this future world, we said, I could speak one language, you'll hear me in your own preferred language, and we could have this conversation, and it would feel normal and natural. That's we're getting there, right? But there's
right.
a lot that needs to still happen to make that happen. Would it be fair to say, though, that we'll figure it out in a few years, and so we really shouldn't worry about not being able to work productively remotely?
I think probably even closer than a few years, right? We've already seen, like, Microsoft recently demoed on stage the in meeting experience of speaking in one language and having that be translated in real time into another language in the original speaker's voice. I mean, that's just like wild stuff, right? To the point you just made, a very natural, free flowing, but hugely impactful evolution of all of this. And so, but doing that again requires the right tools for that job. You have the platform in the background doing it, but you also need to make sure, again, that you've got the right physical tools in the room or on your head or wherever it is, so that the data is coming through nice and cleanly. And when you're getting that real time translation in a different language in someone else's voice, that it's accurate and not embarrassing results that could have been something else, right? So I think that yes, it's going to make the hybrid story even more compelling as time goes on. I think the reasons for why working hybrid, working remotely from different places, different geographies, even that is just going to, those barriers are going to keep coming down, which, that's a whole nother conversation when it comes into the whole return to office versus hybrid and all that. I think that while there are arguments in various directions, the barriers to effective, productive hybrid working from anywhere is just going to continue to get whittled down with the advancement of these tools and the continued bettering of the algorithms and hardware itself on the actual in-room, in-person side of things.
Right, and I think the other thing you're talking about is really we're changing that from big office conference room equipment that's maybe expensive, like we used to have once upon a time, right? The telepresence and spatial
Yeah.
books in the room, and you're turning it into kind of my own personal headset that I can work with on the go.
it's and you're looking at both places, right? And luckily, we're not looking at massively expensive room solutions anymore in order to meet the room need. But when we talk about both sides of it, that the headset and the in-room equipment become an equal part of the picture nearly, because I think that pre-COVID, you had a lot of people that viewed that remote worker with the headset in their home office, wherever, as well, they're an add-on to the meeting. That's not
Right.
super important, right? So,
Exactly. It's the voice that came out from the middle of the table, and
yeah,
everybody had to stop their natural flow of the conversation.
they did. People were like, who was that again? Who's remote? And after COVID, that all changed. And of now, there's efforts in different directions to continue to determine what the actual reigning flow of hybrid work is going to be. But the reality currently, and what it has been for a few years now, is that suddenly video became front and center, not just audio. But video became front and center because we needed to see each other when we were no longer in person in those rooms. And then the big light got shined on the fact that, wow, not everyone is super clearly heard at home, at wherever they're quarantining at, or then beyond that, wherever they're working from. So we need to be able to see them clearly. We need to be able to hear them clearly, and then enter AI into the picture, and it becomes even more important in that room and in the home office, because now we're doing things like getting the transcripts of in room and the people at remotely. And in room, our bigger problem became, okay, well, we got 6 people in the room. Now, how are we going to get these transcripts to be accurate? We got to start identifying individual people in the room by their
Right.
voices. That
Right.
audio becomes even more important. Facial recognition is now entering that part of the story as well. So the video is another key part of the whole AI story, and making sure that there is an effective and full hybrid working solution when it comes to how we're adopting AI and how we're moving forward in the
Yeah.
world of work.
So if you actually kind of, wrap up the technology that's where it's coming together, the way we've gotten used to working maybe, and this future vision of removing the barriers, right, between digital and physical world, and I'm thinking about this whole AI person team that just becomes a team, idea, where
Yeah.
you're just speaking to, and it doesn't matter if it's an agent or a coworker. Um, Give me your vision. What will work look like in a few years?
Yeah. I mean, I personally think that work is going to continue to, as we get the tools in our hands to enable all the various type of working scenarios that we need, no matter where we're at. We're eliminating more noise from being in the mix. We're focusing on people's voices more clearly. We're getting higher and higher percentages of accuracy in our transcripts through spoken words. We're identifying people more clearly, even if they don't speak up when they're in a meeting room. We just know who is in that meeting room because of the video that was present, because it's capturing the full room. As we get a more clear picture of no matter where we're at or how much we participated in any of these rooms, with the right hardware in our hands, again, no matter where we're at, I think that the future of work is going to shake out to be a much more friendly environment to various types of remote and hybrid scenarios, where folks are saying, hey, I am no longer needing to be confined to this one space, because we are working effectively all over the place. It's going to open up international doors for all types of businesses. I think that's going to be huge. The way that people actually do that on a day-to-day basis is going to be a lot more like we talked about earlier. We're going to see, I don't think keyboard and mouse are flat out going away anytime soon. But I think we're going to see a lot more people that are able to sit there and recognize the increases in productivity by speaking directly to Copilot, whatever AI tool they're using to conduct the business they need to conduct, through that headset, through a mic in the conference room. We just did some interesting research actually that came out just today, speaking to various things when it comes to how happiness levels within the workforce using AI tools, et cetera. And the happiness levels, the TLDR of it, right? Happiness levels were uh, increased on varying levels when people had levels of AI usage in their day to day. And so I think that we're going to see an increased use in
Do
that.
we know why?
I think that when you look at it right now, well, here's one of the things that I think is a key part of it, and I think it spills out into this research a little bit, but in more cleaner number ways. We already see shifts happening in the workforce in terms of restructurings, in terms of efficiencies being gained for large organizations, translating to less people sometimes. And the people that remain are often people that are picking up those skill sets in AI, learning how to use them, learning how to be more efficient and more productive. And so that is going to lead to, obviously, morale is impacted by those that are finding a path forward and recognizing that path forward, feeling comfortable and skilled on that path forward, versus those that are still feeling lost and not sure how to catch up. So I think that's one of the areas where the happiness piece comes in. But to the
And
question,
that's part of why I got excited ahead of kind of this conversation, because I think the barriers to the people who are not coming along as fast as some of the others have to do with it being scary when you talk about things like prompts. And I actually remember, if you go back a couple of years, I used to have these huge tables of
oh
prompt,
yeah, yeah,
copy and paste prompts. And I actually remember, and the conversation about a prompt engineer being a thing. And I remember I did go on record saying that's not going to happen, right? We
yeah,
will
yeah,
talk to the tools, as opposed to prompt the tools.
yeah,
So as the more you bring in that natural conversation,
absolutely.
the easier it should be for people to just be brought along.
It is. And I mean, to what work looks like you said, what people, you think about these long prompts, and sometimes this is a back and forth scenario with the prompting, right? You sit there, you make your prompt, it comes back with the answer. Now you refine the prompt or say, no, let's try this or that. It actually takes you 4 times longer to type something out than it does to say something, right? We can
Yeah.
think faster than we can speak, but we can speak way faster than we can type. And so think about productivity levels, how fast things get done, how much more you can accomplish if you start to shift from your interaction being prompting, that you not only have to type, but you got to think about how to structure your prompt. As you shift away from that and you just shift toward hands free, I'm talking to you system like you're a person, that is so much faster. It's so much quicker, and it becomes more natural because you're already used to doing it all day long. It's not a skill that you got to learn. It's not a prompt engineer job you got to think about getting
Yeah,
into. It's
you
gonna,
also don't
yeah,
need to be that structured. I mean, I can say from
right,
my experience, right, the way I work with the tools is I actually, I was going to say brainstorm, right? I mean, I do
yeah,
a mind dump in terms, here's what I'm thinking, right? And
yeah,
then it'll start giving me structure. And that's way more effective than thinking through the structure myself and putting it into words, even if I type
yeah.
fast.
Well, just spending time thinking on the structure in and of itself is brain power and time, and that's just
Right.
structuring your inquiry. If you can just get rid of that and just let the thought spill out, just talk to it, and it will begin to make sense of that. It's going to radically change.
Fabulous. So really the thing about this whole idea, right, of communication as the keyboard, right, is not
Yeah,
so much about the fact that it's easier to speak than to type. It's actually that you skip the step that you actually do when you have to put it in writing and you start putting structure and thought and, all the way to prompting and coding, which
yeah,
I hope we will lose.
yeah.
Fabulous. So, as we wrap up, I do have a question for you that I usually wrap up with. We're really good at asking for answers, and I actually want to ask you, what's the question we should all be asking ourselves these days about the future of work?
The question we should be asking ourselves about the future of work, which is kind of a loaded question, right? Right now with AI and all that, I think the question should be um, not so much about how do I catch up or how do I learn, but where can I get started right now with just testing out the tools that exist for free now? Where can I go and just start toying with, playing with the technology that's there? I think if we get caught up in the question of um, how do I begin to learn? How do I get caught up? How do I upskill? That becomes overwhelming, and it can paralyze us, and it can help prevent us from really moving forward effectively. But if we just say, where can I go to start playing with the tools right now? and then take that action after that question. Whether it's ChatGPT, if you've got access to Copilot, whatever it is, you just go out and you just start typing. You just start asking. You just start getting comfortable with what it feels like. Or if it's enabled in the tool, you hit that little microphone button, you put on your Jabra headset and you start talking to it. And that will start you out. If you feel lost in it all, you feel lost on where to begin. What does the future look like for me in my career? If I don't get involved with this AI stuff, is my career okay? Just get started. Just ask yourself, where can I get started, and go do it. And I think if you're able to do that and you actually take the follow-up action to just go do for 5 minutes here and there, spend 20 minutes after work, whatever it is, try to figure out how it gets into your work life. That's going to ultimately change your mindset on it, but then also your trajectory of how you use it in your career moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is not the time to wait for somebody to teach you
No.
what you need to know. You definitely need to make time in your day, budget, and focus to actually go try out stuff and just keep going.
100%. 100%.
Fabulous. Thank you, Josh, for joining me today. For more about Josh Blalock and Jabra, check out the links in the podcast description. Thank you for joining us on The Future of Less Work, where we're piecing together the ever-changing puzzle of work. And remember, the new social contract is a win-win between people and organizations. Your best people do not work because they have to, nor because you tell them to, nor because you measure them on it. They work because they want to, because by working for you, they're also accomplishing what's important for them in life. Till next time.